right now. I'm working also like on new songs for a new album, and I also want a few steel string things on there. It could be that after maybe next year or something, I will just have both on stage.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how are you able to adjust? Like you are classically trained. It's totally different instrument to me.
Sure.
Okay.
It is. Like the hand position and the technique is
Right.
different. I think it worked well for me because when I got into fingerstyle and tried to copy these people, I didn't play classical at all. It was not a mix. I really went for the fingerstyle technique then,
Mm-hmm.
and left because I had like 8-9 years of classical playing. I knew that if I would just totally focus on one thing now, I wouldn't forget about the classical technique. It will still be there if I pick it back up in 1 year or something.
Okay.
So I think that was quite helpful for me to not do both and try to switch back and forth all the time with the technique, and that would have taken way longer.
So back then, when you were playing classic, you were playing with nails, right?
Actually not. I never, like as a child, I was always like biting my nails, so I never really had
you supposed to
nails.
play with the nails? That's how you taught?
My teacher always said you have to grow some nails, but I never did that. And then I had some nails, and then I went to play soccer and something, and then they were like they broke, and it never. I was not I was practicing quite good. I think that's why he was not that angry with me. But I like with the nails, it was not a good job. It was actually the first time when I started studying that I was really focusing on playing with nails, and then it really became a different instrument. And that was again another big change for the right hand. If you suddenly play with nails and you want to have a good tone, and with the steel string, sometimes, at least that's what I saw with a lot of fingerstyle players, is that they are like pulling the strings away from the guitar.
Right.
And with the classical guitar, you actually have to like press the string like into the guitar basically to get a good tone. So it's basically the opposite thing you have to do. And that's only possible when you have nails. So that was really the first time where I really was spending a lot of time to work on these very small details to get a better tone.
Back to your plan, you maybe next year you're bringing steel strings also, and
yes.
Are you planning to play like classical because your nails attached to your hand, and then are you going to play with that nail when you play steel strings also?
I have to. I have to find a solution that works with both. I have now like gel nails, like Okapi also uses them, so they're quite strong, and I think they would survive the steel string pieces. Like the steel string pieces I wrote now are not that like aggressive and loud. So it's more or less like ballad stuff. So that would be fine. I think you never know what comes next when you compose, but I just hope right now that the nails will survive the steel string, and I will spend a little more time like filing on stage and trying to make sure it works. But
I'm gonna ask you some question about your arrangement and compositions. When I saw you playing Night in Tunisia.
Oh yeah.
What's the story behind that? I was blown away.
Okay, so maybe for the students who don't know the piece, like it's an old jazz standard from the 1940s from Dizzy Gillespie. I always wanted to arrange some jazz standards for fingerstyle guitar. I never was like a very good jazz improviser, so I thought like for me it's maybe because I anyway play solo, it might be a cool approach to just make some good arrangements from these themes. So I took Night in Tunisia because I really loved the groove and the scales they use. It was like it sounded like I could already imagine it would be very cool on guitar. So I sometimes you can hear that, and sometimes you also don't know why, but you imagine, you think like, oh yeah, it sounds like I have to arrange this one. So I did. This is like a piece that changed a lot over time just by playing it, and not I didn't want to change it. It just changed itself. So it became way more funky. So if you now see it on YouTube, like the newer YouTube video, you notice it's way more groovy in the beginning, and it's like, it's not, because it's from the 1940s, it's not supposed to be like a funky piece, but it sort of happened. It just happened to become like that. Like the piece, the original is also in D minor, and so I just tuned my guitar to drop D. Actually, my arrangement, I never wrote it down. It's very close to the original, but for some reason it got like, I played it more and more aggressive and started to play it like a swing, and then it got like really, really groovy. And then because the intro groove changed in that way, the whole piece switched a little bit. But yeah, otherwise the piece it's probably my arrangement that's the closest to the original piece, because I didn't change so much. I wrote a little walking bass for the B part, but the melody is still exactly the same. So it's not really a complicated or very creative arrangement, I would say, but it's very close to the original.
It is. It sounds like it, though.
It's hard to play. It's for sure. It's very hard to play. But like from the arranging part and from the composing part, I'm more close to the original than in any other arrangement I ever did. So
So how did you come up with that walking bass part, B part? Were you picking up the bass line, or did you take it from some other arrangement that you did before?
No, actually, I like writing a walking bass is not that hard, I would say. I when I write these things, I always write it down on my, like, in scores on my laptop or on a paper. And like with walking bass, you can have a very simple walking bass version. If you just take from every chord, you just take the root note, and then you go diatonically or chromatically, you just connect them. Then you have like a simple version of a walking bass. And to make it a little more interesting, you sometimes change a few notes and maybe come from a different, like approach the next bass note or root note from a different direction than you would expect, or you maybe don't take the root note, but maybe the third or the fifth or another note in the bass. So you can fool around with that until you find it interesting enough. But that's quite a technical thing to do. So I wrote it on paper, and then I thought, shit, now I have to play this, but luckily it was okay to play it.
Yeah, that was really good. So it depends on the melody that is on the bass line, and then you see how they match.
Yeah, so I see what chords, what harmonies they're supposed to be. Of course, you can also change the chords, but I didn't do that in this arrangement. So I just took the original chords. So for example, when there is an A7 and the next chord was a D minor, you can play A, B, C, C sharp, D, for example. Or you can do all kinds of things. You can also do like A and you jump to the higher A and then you go like down to the D or something like that. So, but I didn't really think about it too much. The only thing that's always a good tip, maybe also for composing and for anything, that I try to avoid to have the same note in the bass as in the melody, because that's like if you have a different note, it's always more interesting. So if it's the same note, it can be okay. Of course, when it's a fast piece like this, then you probably even wouldn't hear it. But if you try to avoid it, then mostly it's more interesting. So each sounds better. But yeah, it's a little bit of just try and error actually, and then you have a walking bass at some point. And then I learned it from the paper, and I had to put like the second half from the melody like an octave up to be able to play the walking bass I wrote down. So that sometimes happens, but it's always about being creative and finding solutions. If something doesn't work, you always find a solution. That's for sure.
Do you have to sit back and write on papers, or does it flow like, does that come down to you and you are able to play?
Very different. Very good question. Because sometimes I have, I am like, sometimes it takes me like 2 weeks to write a piece. Sometimes it takes me like 2 years to write a piece. It's like, it's so different. And actually, I think the best pieces, in my opinion, I wrote are the ones that were just flowing, and I needed not much time to write them, and they just came, and I had them in my head and put them on the guitar, and they were there. But that doesn't happen very often. So most of the time, like the ideas I have, they don't come through writing down, and they just like through being inspired and imagining things and walking outside, and suddenly you're whistling this melody and you have some inspiration. But then it's about what you do with this idea. And then sometimes it helps a lot to write it down, to see it in front of you, and to actually know what it is, to be able to like analyze your own idea. Like what is special about this idea? And then you get more ideas. What can I do with this actually? If you don't do that, then sometimes these things happen. Probably you know that as well. Like I know a lot of compositions where you have like the A part, then the B part, then a C part, D part, E part, F part, and it goes on and on and on. But it is not really like a song. It's just it's like, where are we? And that's what sometimes happens if you only fool around on the guitar. Then you have ideas and ideas and ideas. But actually, to make a song, you only need one or two ideas, maybe. I don't write things like down very perfectly. It's more like a sketch to make it quickly, and so I understand it.
I see.
But actually, the more simple a melody is, the more crazy stuff you can do with the chords and everything else.
Yeah.
So the melody holds everything together, and that's a very very good thing to know.
Yeah.
So right now I'm writing a piece that has like such a simple melody, and if I wrote it down yesterday, and I thought like, this is more simple than every children's song I know. Like, what is this even? But then I like fooled around with different chords, and now I start really liking it. And I'm curious where it will go. I have no idea. It's just like 1 minute so far. But but if you have a simple melody, you can do so much with it. If you have a complicated melody, it's very complicated to make the song flow and like just being nice and like enjoyable to listen to. And of course it also works, but I like to start with something simple and then make it more complicated, instead of like starting with something very complicated and then trying to make it simple enough to be able to listen to it. That's not really natural, I think.
Okay.